downloading, and you're live.
Man, we had no technical difficulties whatsoever. This is the Dream Show Extra Live from the CGI capital of the world, the internet. How's everybody doing today? Good, good. Me too. Me too. I'm excited to be here if you can't tell. Isaac and I had a good conversation leading into the show here that pushed us a couple minutes later because we're having fun. A lot of stuff going on that we cannot tell you, and you probably don't want to hear about it anyway. But it was funny to us, and then some jujitsu stuff happening, or at least PGF related things and events happening that had happened that we saw again. Bring some fresh eyes to some old stuff. I feel like that would be a good, thing to go into the week because we didn't really get to talk about it too much. I think on the last episodes, anyway, we talked a little bit about it, but not much yet. Which is Grapplers, the changing of the guard, which Subconscious Studios, as you can see on my main shirt over there, he and
Completely unintentional, actually.
Brain Isaac and the Brain Keelan got together and they've been doing this thing. And I don't know who else is helping. That's who I talk to the most. I'm sure other people. I mean, there's lots of people that filmed and did stuff, but as far as like production, like what do you call that job? Editing? Like what are y'all right now?
Well,
who are y'all now? Like
right now, right now we're editors.
Okay.
But so the way that I don't know, the thing that you learn when you start getting to the top of some industries and things is that like you're like, oh, y'all made up this whole structure.
That's what I was trying to figure out. People talk about certain like a job, that's doing, and I'm like, well, what does that mean though? Like what?
Somebody put a definition to a word, and that is it's so that they can communicate something across to the person that they're trying to get to do a job of, like, this is your job description and you can look at this definition and it's what it is. I think in the modern day that started to merge a lot because there's just so many multi-skills. What we call the guys that we hire and that we work with every time we've been doing productions is we call them Swiss Army knives. Is that like that's who we look for, and that's like what we kind of identify as is, well, really I can do anything. I can mash buttons, I can edit, I can shoot, I can direct, I can interview, I can be on camera, I can be off camera, I can plug in mics, I can just point a camera. Because like the thing is that a lot of people too think that it's just pointing a camera at the action and things will happen, and it's like, well, no, you have to know where to point it. And
so that's an interesting. Sorry to cut you off. For
no,
you,
go ahead.
In the 4 or 5 years that we've been working together, going back now recently, looking at some of the stuff that we were doing during the first Dream Show season, where we were at the PGF season 2 together, versus what you do now has definitely been a big jump in the way that, at least like artistically, you see it. You still have the same thing that you like to talk about when you talk about your vision, but the actual like cameras and the different shots that you look for now are much different than what you were looking for back then, even with the same kind of vision in mind, which is something I think is really cool.
It's a skill set, and it's something that like it varies from like thing to thing, because like somebody who's really good at filming weddings or events may not be good at filming our sport, jiu-jitsu.
How important is it to know jiu-jitsu or to film jiu-jitsu? Like, can people could a good cameraman just come in and do it?
No. We've had that experience at multiple levels, multiple different shows, multiple different times. Like, that's not calling any one place or person out. Is that like, no, is that like I'd rather you be a blue belt in jiu-jitsu and have turned the camera on once when it comes to show night versus showing up and you've been running cameras for the last 20 years and never seen jiu-jitsu. Like if you're walking in and you're like, oh, what's this karate tournament? Like, no, that guy's not going to cut it, because it's knowing when and where to be. And like, especially when we're talking about filming like the live jiu-jitsu stuff, is a lot of times you're having to do jiu-jitsu, but you're having to do jiu-jitsu for both guys. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So like
predict where it's going.
I have to know, oh, he's going to spaz out and he's going to go this way. But if he counters him, then we're going to end up over here. If I'm going this way and everything happens over there, well, we know now, especially in the meta of the game, that there's breaks and transitions and things that happen that if you're not paying attention, you're like, how did that, what happened? Like we only recently in the last couple of years got our hands on a replay machine. That was like mine and Keelan's like holy grail. Like when we got that thing, it changed the game because you can take those moments and pause them and slow them down.
Was anybody else doing that?
No.
Yet in jiu-jitsu?
No. We didn't have live replay on any jiu-jitsu show at the time that we started running live replays.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like when we figured out the power that we had in our hands with that thing, it was crazy. Like there's a little bit of the sauce on like making that is that like you could run, if you had that one machine, you could run multiple different kinds of projects just off that one machine if you knew how to do it. But like we've kind of like daisy chained and just put together a bunch of hobbyist equipment with like what pro equipment that we could afford to put in, and like it's a pro setup, but it is a sleeper setup that people don't understand how it works, and sometimes we don't either, and we just figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. Just be patching stuff in as it goes.
To get back to your original thing about like the roles and like who's playing roles in it, is that like kind of when it comes to the documentary, everybody kind of plays a role to some extent. Like we're reaching as deep into the bucket of footage and things that we can find from, there was a whole team this go round of social media guys that were shooting on professional cameras, and like that's what they were doing. And like some people think, oh, you're a filmmaker, well, just shoot content. Well, there's so many different types of content, and you have to shoot for each specific type. And then when you think about a documentary, that's a accumulation of all of that. Like think about the last documentary you watched on Netflix. Like there was probably cell phone footage. There was probably home footage from the 90s or the 80s or whenever. Like,
yeah, we just watched the one on Netflix, me and Thomas yesterday, actually, a lot of that crap. The one where the gold, I think is what it's called, where they went to the Paris Olympics basketball thing, 2024.
Yeah,
really good stuff, dude. That's really, I don't even care that much about basketball that much. Like I enjoy, I'm like all sports in a way. It's like I enjoy basketball that much. And even now though, like I realized I didn't know many of the guys that were the players. Now most of the dudes that I knew are now like the old dogs that are on their way out. There's a whole group of guys coming from around the world that maybe I'd heard their name, but I didn't realize this guy was a Frenchman, and this guy was a Canadian, and this guy was, Serbian, and this guy is
it's like, and they have their own stories,
bro, and they all each had a story. And then dude, like some of the behind the door, they close the door sometimes and kick the camera people out or whatever, and you see the cameraman just kind of try to inch to the other side a little bit, and not get all the way out or whatever. That's
the other thing when you're talking about like what we're looking for is like we want a jujitsu person, and we want somebody who takes the instructions of like, don't turn the camera off.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, just you're a fly on the wall.
It's interesting. And so there's a lot of good stories, and if it's well done, you could see where some of the chatter from back and forth is being recorded a little bit day to day, but not like direct to where it's like, hey, Isaac Stevens said this about you, but it was just like, oh, we heard people were saying that stuff or whatever, man. And if that's what they're saying, then this is how we feel about it. And it's like, but it wasn't coming out, I don't think, at the time. Like this wasn't like news interviews that people were putting. These weren't like hot takes that came out during the Olympics. A lot of it was these kind of like interviews that were behind the scenes, things like that, where the guys were a little bit more candid, I think, than they would be in a 30-man scrum where everybody's like around you with a microphone screaming at you or whatever. So there's a lot, like you said, that goes into that, guys post match versus a guy who's had, a night to calm down.
talking to the next morning interviews are a fascinating thing on the Grapplers documentary. Like not everything makes it to the final product, but like when you sit there and get to listen to these guys, like when they've gotten to think about it and the next morning or whenever something's set in, like it's tough. It's an interesting take.
It can be tough or it can be really good for you in a way, but like it's like a lot of times, and this has been a interesting psychological thing that I've looked into a lot lately. It's almost like what is it called, the witness like thing, where witnesses are really not good witnesses. People are not really good, like reliable narrators of something they witnessed, and even somebody who took part in a thing doesn't necessarily have like a correct memory of what happened and stuff like that. Their perspective,
it's almost like your reality and your perspective and your like everything you're projecting onto it's going to be different from each eyewitness.
And then by the night and then the next morning, you've probably spoken to other people who've had perspective. You might have seen video at this point,
comparing
whatever had happened, and then you're like, oh man, that's not what I thought was, or maybe it is what you thought, and everybody convinced you that it was otherwise. And so you can see, that's what I'm saying. There's lots of different things that kind of come in with that. So it is a very interesting thing, because when I get them on the mat, it's a hot take almost essentially right then, because they're still full of like adrenaline. Everything's right there. They're live.
Bright lights. They're realizing that they're like on TV, and they're like, "Wait, what?"
Right? Yeah. Promo, baby, let's go. So that's a lot different than a guy who's sitting down and being reasonable and having more like of a chance to breathe and give a true maybe thought of what's happening in their, what would be a real answer, instead of just like hey, this is how I feel right now when I'm heated, and not necessarily mad heated, but just like when you're in that moment and you got after it, you just, if you've been there, what I'm talking about. It's just hard to explain.
Well, it's that sports story. It's like you were just talking about with the basketball documentary, is that like you're not necessarily a diehard basketball fan, but you've been affiliated with it, you understand it, and you've seen it, the game.
Now, like some of the things that I've seen on this video.
Exactly. You've seen this documentary, and there's always that story in sports. There's always the human story. It's like, why do we do sports? We've done sports. There's indigenous sports. There's
Keelan and Steph Curry sound a lot alike when they talk, by the way. Just cadence,
like the cadence of it. I can see that.
Swear to God, that's one thing I noticed too. Sorry, I want to cut you off. That just ADHD did its way in.
Well, that was a good segue back into where I was going to circle back around to the original start of this, was that like, so referring to Keelan as like the Steph Curry, is that like at this point in the sport, we have found the dream team of producers that most of what we like, our group, I don't know how to describe this, because like there's kind of two factions of the jiu-jitsu like content world. There's like, I don't know what to call this side of produced, and it's almost like they're the record label. Like if you look at this, like, because I'm gonna make like a punk rock analogy here, is that like there's like the record label side of the community, and then like as we like have grown on the side that we're on, is that we're kind of like the underground. And on the underground side, which of course everybody knows, like being affiliated with 10th Planet, like that's kind of the vibe, and kind of like it's the underground side. So it's like that whole side, that production crew, we all work together on different promotions, like every single different like promotion that you can think of, we work together on. And the way that we've worked is that we're all those Swiss Army knives. And we just show up and we have like a backpack full of just different equipment. We dump our backpacks out in the middle and we all just start Frankensteining things together till it works. We get it live and we get the thumbs up from the other producers, and we're like, all right, whatever we did, keep doing it for the next 6 hours. And so like referring to Keelan as like the Steph Curry, is that like, I don't know, we were talking about the fact that we're old now, and so our goats aren't, Steph Curry is one of the goat runners right now, right?
Definitely.
Right. So I would definitely put Keelan in that category, as far as like he changed the game as far as how we were consuming and how we were watching this. I mean, there are people that like, we know Brandon, and he has students across the globe because of who Brandon was as BMAC. BMAC is the product of Keelan. I love you, homies. Like, I love all that. Like, everybody knows this, is that like Keelan is the man behind the curtain, just, I mean, by himself over here with his toes like pulling down on chains and making
Brendan
things
said
like
that though a lot. He's
yeah,
not. That's
yeah.
not a secret.
Like I like
You don't know,
so.
you don't know, but it's not a secret. Like
Well,
Brendan.
I'm just letting the public know.
Yeah. I'm just saying. It's like
who my man
so,
Keelan is.
yeah. This isn't a diss for sure. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Nobody would take
yeah.
it as one if you know, because this has definitely been said publicly by Brandon lots of times. And
Right.
you've had to maybe be there to see that, but it's definitely no secret that is true. And that's funny too, because in one of the clips I was talking about too, the guy. I think it was Kevin Durant. They were talking to him about some guys that were saying they were going to do whatever, and he just kind of laughed or whatever. And he was like, "All right, guard Steph, Just how you going to do that?" And then, so it's just like, yeah, that's it. It's like, so I feel like, dude, we got Keelan. It's like, what are we going to do? And it's like, I don't know. Keelan's going to get it. And it's like, all right, word.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
What you need, dog. I'm ready when you are. You know,
yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah, and so like having him at the head of that like group is that like you said, like we'll figure it out somehow. Like somehow it works.
We got Keelan, dog. It's gonna the backside's gonna get figured out. Back in, you know what I mean?
Right. As long as y'all can keep face and not act like the house is on fire, we'll keep the flames from off your back. Like that's basically the way that he works. And so, when you talk about it, like we ended up assembling this team, and when we're talking about grapplers, like it started off, it was just me and Keelan. And like we're talking, you can go back on your channel, I believe, and it's in during the season 2 of PGF. Like I think I have it on camera. Like when we walked in the building, Brandon like looked past you and pointed at me, and he was like, "I'm most happy that you're here." And I was like, "Me?" I was like, who is this guy? Like I was just getting introduced to the 10th Planet world. I was just starting hanging out with you. Like I was like, what is this? And then Keelan and I hung out during that whole season, and that's where we teamed up. And that's kind of where Grapplers, like what I was doing and filming, like just kind of in the pocket and seeing like there's that hard drive. I'm gonna get the rest of it.
Grapplers is what we wanted.
Yeah,
from what we were doing essentially. It was the pilot, I guess, kind of episode, season, whatever for that, because they weren't thinking about that way yet. I don't think.
Well,
maybe they were, and that's why Brandon said what he said, because I told him what we had talked about a bunch of that stuff, I guess, behind the scenes before, and I really don't necessarily have a specific memory of a lot of those conversations. It's funny you say that though, because I do remember when I was like, "Hey, I'm going to bring a guy," and he's like, "Yes, that's what we're trying to do."
That's the point.
Your social media thing. We were doing a lot of the, I've been getting tutored for or whatever, mentored, whatever the word is, with Brandon for a bit at this point for, my social media stuff and different things like that. So I think, that was like twofold. One, it's like he knew that bringing you was going to be good for the overall PGF thing, but then also like that was like a nod to like, dude, I'm glad you're doing the thing. That's cool. You brought the guy. Because like, and that's how it's like, it's like we glad you're here because we know it's going to be the thing. We know we're popping off now. Somebody's the guy,
and like now, like that's how we've assembled this team. Is that like we just every single show?
How many people brought a guy for season 3? How many people brought a guy for season 4? Like that's the thing.
Exactly. It started building up,
and with you, it coming with me, and when you wanted to do that, and we did that. That started a whole like vibe for it too. People were like, "Oh shoot, this thing is like different." And like we did all the watch parties, we did all that kind of stuff to help like boost it up. And I don't know that other people probably did or didn't. I just know that we did all that stuff along that same way.
It's been cool to see it grow.
Of like think about all that for a while. Really,
it goes from like just a couple homies at a few gyms that were like, "Oh yeah, my buddy's in that," and they were watching it, or like people's grandmas, to like where now like there's just like completely unattached fans that are like watching this content and watching the things and like really getting into it. And like I've seen some of the comments like where people are watching the Grapplers and they're like coming in through that way, and they're like, "Oh, like I didn't know anything about this. Like where can I see the full matches?" I'm like, it's working. Like, and you can see the full matches on PGF World YouTube.
Yep.
But anyways, like accumulating that group, the core group from this Grapplers was you had me and Keelan and Michael Plaster. Yeah, Dave Spiral Media on Instagram. We had JJ.
Nice bonus.
Yeah, and
See, he didn't know jujitsu before he got there, though.
no, he
wasn't
didn't.
necessarily shooting live
Let
matches.
me finish the list before I forget. But then there was also Danny Golyer. I just messed up. I butchered his name, but he's on Instagram. Yeah, and he's popping off with his documentary that he's doing. That's pretty cool. And so like he was a film guy that didn't know a whole lot about jiu-jitsu. And then we also gained Noah this go round that was on the gimbal a lot, because the gimbal guy doesn't get the shout out a lot of times. But if we got to talk about the job that like people play rock, paper, scissors in the back on the veterans, it's the gimbal. On game day, gimbal is one of the hardest jobs. That's the guy that's, and when I'm talking about a gimbal, it's the little 3-axis like sling thing that you see the camera on.
The handheld.
But it's a way to run the handheld in such a smooth way to where it actually, the idea when you're teaching the technique and when Keelan teaches people the technique is that like you're almost mimicking the human neck and head, the way it would look and move, so that when the people at home are watching it on their like 56-inch screen, it's not like whoa, like, you know what I mean?
Thought of it that way, that it was like you'd look at it like a person would be looking at it. I guess I got that it was like an up close and smooth visual, but I didn't really understand that was part of what was happening, I guess, too.
Yeah. I'm being your eyes.
I'm such a simple creature.
when you're making the footage and when you're shooting it, like I'm supposed to be your eyes. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't sit there and look at something and like,
I get that, I guess, right? But it's just kind of
not
what I've been used to historically, and then just seeing it's just like what we've done. Like we just do that, so I don't like. There's no science behind that to me. I'm sure that like there's a lot of things that there's science behind for sure.
All right, this is a Tom Stackhouse special. He loves this. He goes, do you know when your electricity, the light that is shining on your face right now, that electricity, do you know when that's being made?
Like like the beginning part of it?
No, do you know the electricity that's being generated, that's being shined on your face right now? When was it generated?
Billions of years ago.
No, right now. As soon as you turned it on. That's how electricity works. But everybody just assumes there's like this magical plant or like a battery somewhere, and I may be projecting things into your mind. What did you think electricity, like when you flipped the switch, where did it come from?
You know, I feel like there had to be some sort of like place, one of those big.
There's a generator. Yeah, there's a generator generating that. Like,
yeah, and I feel like
whether it be hydro or gas or nuclear or whatever, but when you flip the switch, that's when it's being generated.
Interesting.
Which that analogy, you can get off in the technicalities and talk about all that, but like the analogy is that like a lot of things that get done in the world, people just assume it happens.
Yeah, you don't know how it gets done.
You're like there's a guy that clicks a button and this happened. Like there's a person that had to plug that in to make it happen.
And so I did, when I was like right out of high school, I worked for a company that did like fire alarms and stuff, and we replaced a bunch of fire alarm systems for I guess it would be the state or maybe the city, whatever, but state, I think, in Tallahassee. And so one of the places we did was I don't know what you'd call it, but like it was like a switcher place, or where there was a bunch of all the screens at, and it would tell you where the power was coming from and how they would switch from here to there, and who was going to get what and stuff. Like I was very, very ignorant and still am. So that's what I don't really. To me, it was like it was in this control room, and they kind of had access to power. It felt like. And they were sending it from one place to the other. So I didn't know. And again, I didn't know where it came from, but I was like, all right, they got it at this place. You know what I'm saying? They're just, maybe there's a bank, like a big battery pack or something. I don't know. Like,
Which some of that's what makes society work, though, right? Is that you have trust that whatever X system works. Yeah, that's if you don't, well, I don't have time to go become a civil engineer and become a chemist and become a botanist and become a pharmacist and become a that's the individual that's one of the definitions of civilization, right? Or like one of the levels of civilization is when you talk about like they've figured out how to compartmentalize tasks so that those tasks are accomplished. And then they do. Like in any organization is the same way. The bigger an organization gets, the more specialized each department can become, because the other department, that's not my department. Like they're going to do that, which comes with its weaknesses if we like get off in the theory of that. But the how did we end up on that?
You brought up your dad.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I brought him up to the analogy of like that thing.
Up your dad, Isaac.
things that just come up as far as like
you don't know how it happens.
Like it just happens, right?
Like, yeah, well, when you go order food, you don't know how it's cooked. You just get it, and if it's good, you eat it. You know
right, what I mean? Right. You don't know that there's
concerned about it when it's not good, or when
a farmer and a distributor and a
You don't have the thing. That's when it's a problem.
Exact same conversation. Yeah. Okay. So when we're talking about that in the production world, like, and I've talked about this on this show, and I've talked about this a bunch, is that like Keelan and I in the early days, so we're talking about back in season 2 of PGF and whatnot, season 3, when we were like building this, and then when we got to like season 4 and we started like actually coming out, and we came out with the first Grapplers, and then the second, as we were learning that, we modeled this after a documentary we watched about the NFL crews that make, it's called the Sunday Symphony. Mm-hmm. And it's basically all follows, I don't remember which teams it follows, but it's like the Packers and like I don't remember the other one, but like some of the big name NFL teams that have had like high level productions for a long time, and they followed them, and we would pause the video because they would show you list of how many people were working on like each job. And we were like trying to match how many, like what did we need to do in our job list to like match those like production levels. And I don't remember the number, but I mean it was so many people that we were just like, how do we do this with 2 people? I don't know. That's all right. You do this part of the list and I'll do that part of the list. And yeah, like we by hand one night, I can't remember what season this was, but it was early. It was like season 3 or season 2. It would have been season 2 or season 4, because season 3 was my season. So it would have been season 4. So season 4, we by hand sat down, and you know those run of shows that we give y'all now? Mm-hmm. This was like early in the days when Brandon first started working for the UFC, and he had gotten one of those run of shows from the UFC. And we sat down and by hand like made a spreadsheet and copied theirs, and was like, how do we do this? Like, how do we put it like in place and like do all this? And then now we have programs that can just write them for us, and we just give it the information and it puts it in there. And like we giggle every time we make one of those, because it's when you're running a live production, as soon as it starts running live, that thing just gets thrown over your shoulder.
I remember Brandon being like, yeah, that thing ain't really that important, man. You don't need a copy of it. And I was like, I feel like I should have. You know how I am. I'm like, no, I need a copy of it. And he's like, probably not. And I was like,
yeah, all right, you all get copies every time.
And then you started telling me like, there's a run of show you guys are supposed to. It's like, I was told that shit wasn't gonna be important, man. So I didn't even get one.
Yeah, details get lost sometimes when live shows have. The show must go on, I believe. But
to be fair to Brandon too, is like he and I both were and have still, do a lot, just riffing to each other in the middle of what's going on. He'll just kind of tell me something, and I'm like, it's live. I gotta go with it. You know what I mean? It's like I have no choice now. You know what I mean? I can't like throw it back to somebody, except for in the case of the Abe LaMontagne thing.
Oh yeah,
Grapplers, where he had to choose his own team. I thought that was a smart pivot.
How did that feel? Because I feel like we captured it well in the documentary in that first episode, where when Carlos like snatched the mic out of your hand, like what was going through your mind when that happens? Because I think I saw the camera angle at one point where like you kind of see you like lunge.
Okay, so the first rule that I really ever got on this thing is like, don't give them the microphone. Like Brandon was very clear about that one time. And then I've since studied and watched and read about this. And the thing is just so a person doesn't just get off and like end up in some weird random tangent rant thing or even go
a lot of confidence boost into people when they feel the mic in their hand sometimes,
especially live, you know. And so then that's the thing for me is like I can't let them just say whatever for their sake too. Some people, right? That's the thing.
You got to retain the ability and right to do
just to pull away and be like, "Hey,
hey, whoa,
sure, my guy." That's not how you feel. I know that, you know, or whatever. But in that moment, okay. So the first thing is like when I started the bidding, I wasn't even really looking at anybody, like to see who was gonna bid. I was like, all right, somebody's gonna bid, somebody's gonna bid, because that's how they've been doing me all night. And that's how you would see in a lot of the things. I'm like, come on, man, just y'all probably didn't put the number, like just bid dang more. Like stop going $5 at a time or 10, you know, whatever at a time. Just say bid a big number. But then they're trying to be smart with their money or whatever it is. I get it. But then by the end of that night, I'd already gotten frustrated with the guys who were like slow playing themselves or whatever and everything. And then, you know, they're like, oh, I'm half crippled and blind and dumb, you know. And I was like, well, here comes another one. You know. And
so comedic timing is important. And the first one was giggly. The second one was a copy. And then everybody else was like, oh, come on, like be original.
For real. And so then when he came up, like I said, I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, all right, we're going to, you know, get Abe. I don't even know how I said it. But then everybody bid
at the same time.
Literally.
Like it was
there couldn't have been a first. There couldn't have been a first.
No.
Right? Like there, if anybody said they were first, it was only because they were closer to the camera that saw them or whatever it was. Looking back,
I looked at it on a timeline and edited it, and there was no way to tell who went first.
And so I've made a suggestion that Brandon did not understand when I explained it out. It was kind of crazy. Keelan got it, I think. And he said he would try to see what it would work. That I think would solve that problem as a whole and make the draft a lot more interesting. It would fix like Ryan's issue.
Yeah.
Also with it being random or not random, people don't believe it's random, you know, and things like that. Some of the randomness.
I will say that I have always seen nothing but pure randomness, and the PGF is the gauntlet weird thing that it is. I mean, I've seen.
So unless I'm wrong, and I could be, and I have been, there is a format that was developed for the season.
Yeah.
It's basically a algorithm.
Right.
And you can figure out your matchups based on draft position and opponents. So there is a way that the fives have a certain set of matches if you're drafted fifth. The fours have a certain set of matches if you're drafted fourth.
Okay. I mean, like, I'm kind of stupid, but that's math.
No, it does, right, but that matters because who does five go against? Does five go against the other fives, or does five go against the ones more?
So how did we determine the draft?
That was supposed
that's
to be
the
random as well. That's
like
that's the part that's being questioned, right? That's the part that it is. But then also, like I'm saying, was Ryan being the last guy, being their fifth pick for their team, was his actual bracket different, being the five instead of the one? Did their one have to go against a harder set of 1, 2s, and 3s, and Ryan had 5, 4s, and 3s?
Plausible.
And did that matter this time because it was random and guys got drafted at different slots versus if you did a true, like we had done before with a ranking 1 through 30 draft where one went, you know, against ones, you know what I mean? You drafted in your true order.
We're discussing in episode 1 of the Grapplers, the draft, right? So no. I'm keeping us in the tangent, but giving us a little bookmark. Is that like, so we're talking about in Grapplers 1 in the first episode, where we're in the draft, and how did the draft affect that? We've seen episode 2 now, correct? And so episode 2, we're in the game, and we already see it where we have 2 major pops in the first day. And And so when we talk about the draft and we talk about the randomization of things get real random real fast as we start to go through the week because it's a gauntlet.
I mean, yeah, that part is definitely true too. But that's what I'm saying. Is like the randomness is random. Like the way that they did the order that was truly random.
Yeah.
But there is a way that on the algorithm of the matches, unless they've done it differently, that they had team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They had the matchup just like the NFL, not maybe just like the NFL or whoever,
but like similar to the way that plays out, right?
Everybody's got to play this many matches. You're gonna miss a couple people on each team. The numbers of 5 or whatever is gonna miss the number whatever player on each team.
Right.
Like they're gonna. That's kind of whatever whoever that player is. I don't know what the algorithm is that way. I'm not that deep into the maths, but there is a way I think that does happen. I don't think that it really matters like you're saying, because by the end of the week so much has already happened and things start to develop or whatever. But the randomness is it has been random from what I know.
Well, and we've seen this too, like in different rule sets and different ways we've tried to run this and do this in multiple times now with the documentary. You kind of see behind the curtain on the fact that like no matter what you do to the rules, no matter what you do to the game, everybody plays the game.
Yeah,
everybody
sorry to go ahead and close out the draft thought process a little bit too.
Yeah.
When that happened with Abe, that put me on the spot because that that goes back to like me and Brandon on the live thing that we are talking about a little bit. He just kind of was like, Steven, that's on you. You got to make the choice. And so I was like, well, Jesus, this is Carlos Machado, somebody obviously that I respect a ton, who's one of the, the masters of the sport. He's the oldest of the Machado brothers, which has to mean something, you know what I mean? To be like, that's that, like, they're all great, you know what I mean? But to be the eldest one of them is like, he's seen the most, or he's been through it, as longer in life and whatever. So there's something to be said for some of that too. So like he to me, Gary, carries a certain level of like, yeah, I'm gonna hear him out no matter what, kind of situation. And also Pedro Sauer, and that's like, oh man,
well, I gotta hear him out, and then here's Hodger in the corner.
I'm gonna tell Hodger, you know what I mean? And then like also Dean Lister, man, Dean is just as decorated as almost anyone. People don't necessarily give Dean, I think, all the credit that he may deserve as a competitor, because he's maybe been a little bit out of the game too for a while in a way, but like Dean fought in Pride. ADCC, he's.
We're just talking about a different era at that point. Like I mean, you're talking about he's one of the goats of that era. Like all 4 of those guys. Like
that's what I'm saying. So like, who, me? You want me to tell them something and like tell you're wrong? 3 of you guys are wrong and 1 of you guys is right. I should have played the seminar card like Abe did, I guess. I should have tried to market myself in that angle, but I was a little intimidated, to be honest with you, to have to make that choice. And not that I'm, afraid of anyone or anything like that, but it's like it was a respect thing, because I honestly did not know or think anybody was first or had a more deserving or less deserving like shot at it. So when he kicked it back to me, I was like, I don't know. So I just kind of panicked and kicked it over to Abe. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pass this on down. I think this is like the corporate move, right? Shit rolls downhill. All right, buddy, you clean this mess up. You started it, and then he did a great job. Finishing the deal. So yeah, that was the thing with that. Is like, we go live. We have these scripts, not necessarily scripts, but the run of show things where there's a timeline. It doesn't tell anybody what to say. It just says what's going to be said as far as like the overall, like there's a commercial, or that, Alex is going to interview the winner of match 7, or whatever it is, stuff like that.
And like, here's a little bit of the like making of the sauce is that like that's for y'all so that you're on camera cues. Like the main thing is so that you know when you're on camera and you can run down the list. And what it's talking about, the like watching the show and like watching how people structure these shows. There's another job that we don't have enough people for this, but there's a job on a main production where my entire job is to sit there and read that run of show and keep us on those timestamps. And every time that there's a timestamp that moves, there's things that are in that list that y'all like. That's where like there's a ton in there that doesn't matter to y'all. And what it is it's stuff that the producer can move and replace and go, okay, we're not going to run this commercial and we will run this one, but we're going to cut this one short because it's too long. But it has a good stop point. And that's where you live produce and you keep a show on time. And that's where if everybody's on that list, that's why like when you're at an NFL game, there's a guy in a red jacket that walks out in the middle of the field. They're running a commercial. And when he walks off the field, all the officials, everybody knows that's the signal. Move the game along. That's where like some of the rules, like some of the people complain about the rules that are in things like that we've implemented over the last couple seasons. Some of those are TV rules. And it's like, it's
like what?
I mean, the stalling calls are genuinely like,
okay, like that.
Those are TV rules. Well, so was the shot clock in basketball. Yeah. So is delay a game. So you know what I'm saying is that like every sport has things to be like, all right,
in baseball, yeah,
there's a million people watching, like chop, like like because they've done that. If you go back in sports, they had baseball games that lasted days, and they were like, "This is awful, guys."
Yeah, nobody's able to. The attention span's way too short now. Anyway, we got too much going on.
I mean, I guess the only people that haven't gotten that are cricket and soccer. They just keep it making the game longer.
Well, that's why nobody watches that stuff.
I mean,
I know. Shut up. Just let me be wrong one time. Okay.
I wasn't shooting shade.
That was my opportunity.
I was just pointing out.
That was my opportunity for somebody to jump in and tell me I don't know anything. And then I could tell you.
Is that your hot take?
Well, no, I just know how algorithms work. And so if I say something people don't like, then they'll start talking back. And then I can just be like, ha, ha, ha. It shows me I'm smart because I really just wanted you to talk to me. So I did this thing where I saw somebody else do it. And I thought, that's stupid, but I'm going to do it. And so like there's like the videos happening or whatever it is. But then the caption is like about some other random thing that's unrelated. Or whatever, and so I just like Chat GPT did a description of like that 70s Datsun pickup truck, and I just put it in the caption of one of the videos I made of something that was like jiu-jitsu related or whatever, and several people commented to me, it's like, "What's up with the truck thing, or what is that all about?" And I was like, "Yep, that's what it was about right there." It's like I just wanted to see if anybody would want who wanted to know about that. Because that was completely had nothing. You don't care what I'm saying about jiu-jitsu a lot of times. A lot of my jiu-jitsu friends and peers, they've got their, they'll watch or whatever, but
they're in their own little bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I can catch them off guard with something like that or whatever, a few of them are like, are you falling off the edge right here? Are you going off the deep end, my guy? What's up? And it's like, I don't know. I mean,
I'm way over the edge.
Am I really smart now because you sent me a message off of the video? Which the algorithms like
for now.
And when our algorithm overlords change, we'll change along with what they desire.
Which I heard somebody say something recently. Oh, Brandon said this. I think where you might not have been on that call. Where he was talking about like when you say the word algorithm, replace it with audience.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like that's genuinely what you're playing to, because that's what the algorithm is that like it's putting an audience together. And so it's like, well, what does the audience engage with? And the thing in the creative journey, like getting like talking about like creating these documentaries and like my style and what we're talking about is that like one of the things that I'm kind of like known for is I'm the camera guy that like I respect people and I respect humans and like I let you be human and there's a place and a time and a setting that you kind of learn in like documenting things, like when to do it. But and I kind of built up a relationship with most of the like community to where like you trust me as an editor that like I'm not here to make anybody look bad. And so like when we talk about like my style, like sometimes for me, I hated the jump cut. I hated like how fast paced like YouTube was making things. like I'm a huge fan of like 70s, 80s, even like the 60s, like film where like an opening montage could be like 15 minutes long. You know, like the opening of Rocky. like so I am definitely guilty of my stuff being way too long because like I don't like to like I don't like to see like the moment like disappear. And so like to me it was always the moment.
That's all they want.
Well,
I had to learn to hear you, they just want to dance.
Well, and I had to learn how to like walk the line to like hold the attention for the long shot. Is like the long shot when you do use it or when you don't jump off and you don't make big cuts, like it's more about like sitting on it. Is it important? Does it push the story forward? Because it's like Keelan and I are in the stage right now of editing this Grapplers documentary where, you know, we've taken timelines that are like 7.5, 8 hours long because you have all the stream footage, you have the pre-show, the post-show, and everything that happened that day on a timeline that was filmed. And so like that whole timeline is like 8-9 sources deep. So like there's 8 to 9 video and or sound sources that you have to look at every single clip and like line everything up and put it on. Some of the cameras were running at the same time. And so you have to like line those up and make the audio forms like line up. Like that's, you were talking about that echo on the last Grapplers that happened a couple times on you. It's like, yeah, there was an extra mic source somewhere in those 15 sources that like, we just didn't have enough editing manpower to find.
Like, I'm so mad, bro. Man, it's my moment.
It's so bad. It's so much better. It's so much better.
No, it is. But that's just, dude, that's such a funny thing too, is like the vanity that instantly comes involved in things when you're like on something that's going to be on like TV or video like this or whatever this is.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I start wanting to be perfect so bad. And it's like, dude, just chill out. It's fine.
Well, and at some point, like there, you do have to.
I can see where there are people that freak out about stuff in some ways, right? But
yeah. Where you get the Christian Bale like yelling at somebody because he's like trying to do a line and they like sneezed. You know, it's like, man, like this is hard.
This is so hard. You know.
Now, on that point, there are people in this community that are notorious to be like, and look, production is hard. Like we said, like every time the house burns down, every time,
always on fire.
It's not whether or not if, it's how.
It's always a lunch rush at a busy restaurant. It's always that.
It's always going to be chaos. There are people in this industry that it is like almost, and like, dude, I've worked hard jobs. Like I've worked jobs that are like tough, like tattooed neck dudes, like break you in half kind of guys that you're working with, and they're physically capable of it because they can pick up a transformer and put it in the back of a truck with one hand. Like,
let's go.
I've worked in those worlds. The production world here has gotten close to worse than that a couple times. And there are people like, I'm not going to say any names, but people know who they are. And that like, there is a way, and working with the group that I've been referring to from earlier, like working with this group, there is a way that you can do this and have that like horrible experience that it is to do live production and it be fun and be uplifting and be a part of like the culture that like everybody hears for the love of the game, and nobody has to like walk away like almost in physical altercations. Like it doesn't have to go that way, because it's, you can just know that everybody, and we were talking about like when you get the type of Swiss Army knives I was referring to earlier, of people that are able to do any job, you can rely on the fact that whatever compartment, whatever department you put them in, they're going to execute it to the best of their abilities. And when you can like rely on that, well, like I said, you know everything's going to go bad. So you don't have to react to it. You can just go with the flow and just, well, that's the next thing we got to fix because we fixed it from the start. And so, like, I went off on the tangent about being a good person while you're doing production. Where were we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the grapplers and that. I wanted to get your take on this last episode and like where you're at on it and what you thought viewing it as a competitor that's been through it. They're in day one. You're kind of seeing what the guys are saying. Like, what has been your like takeaway from this last episode of Grapplers changing of the guard?
Specifically, the stuff that was on Grapplers, it's definitely people are in day one, right? You could tell that there's a lot of that fresh energy for the guys who've never been there, and they don't know quite what to expect. And then you could see the seriousness in some of the stuff from a guy like maybe Ryan Aiken, the way that he's talking about it as a whole. Like, he's not been there as a competitor, but he's had several teammates and his coach that have been there as a coach and athlete or whatever. And so even though he hadn't done it, he understood, I think, the task ahead of him or whatever, and was prepared as he could be to deal with that. But some of the other players hadn't, and you could see they were still thinking about, is this day versus that day hard matches, these days matches versus this day's matches and stuff. And it's like, ooh, all right, I forget how this played out for them day to day, but that's always kind of a trap if you start looking at stuff like that, because some of those matches don't come. Like, I mean like the dunks or the guys that you think you're gonna get, they're gonna hold you to a 0, and they're not gonna beat you. You may even dominate. You may even like put down one of your best performances and get 0 points on those guys. And so then that next match that you thought you may not have to go as hard for because this guy's gonna be really tough or whatever, he almost becomes do or die, and now you're the underdog against the guy that you got to score on to stay in the hunt in a certain time of the season. Whereas if you took day one a little bit more serious or went after it a little bit different on day one, on day 4, you may not have to spend as much money, quote, physical energy and stuff to get across the finish line if you can front load a little bit. So it's interesting to see everybody. We all come in, and I did the same, thinking about which way is going to be the best way to get to the finish line healthy, and so I don't know if it's to speed up early and then kind of coast and pick your shots later, because I think jumping out to a big lead gives you some comfort, you can kind of go from there a little bit. But then also, man, you run into a bad stretch, and if you lose that momentum, it could really be detrimental by the end of the season, especially going into the playoffs. The other thing I saw, go ahead.
Go ahead.
But the other thing I saw that was big is that this season we noticed too is a lot of guys are getting hurt. A lot of guys are taking too much to get through, or to tap or to not tap or whatever, because they're not really thinking about the overall consequences of it in the long term. Or, and to be fair to him, Porfirio against Marcin, he was doing a great job defending leg lock, heel hooks, and different things like that against a really, really monster opponent, especially on day one where we were all unsure who this guy was exactly. He did a really great job defending for I don't know how long it was, but it felt like in the moment it was like, all right, he's okay. And then he said in the documentary, he's like, I hadn't really seen that really from people much, where somebody would actually go in for that Z lock on you, and so he didn't think it was going to be that bad. And then now he knows. And so that's one of those jiu-jitsu things that happens sometimes. It's like, I didn't know that was going to hurt that bad until it did. Like I've never had that happen, so I didn't know. And so for him, to be fair to him, dude got broke off in a bad way, but he didn't understand that it could happen because nobody's ever done it to him before in that way. But this was a new level, obviously, of thing.
And talking about that replay machine that we have and whatnot, and that like telestrator that Brandon has now, is that the both things that we brought to the jiu-jitsu community first as the PGF, by the way, when he like slowed it down, and like, because I really edited that. I was editing that on an airplane on the way to one of the qualifiers. And so like, I'm literally sitting there for like 45 minutes, like going back and forth between the break, trying to find the right moment and like all the camera angles. And like the lady next to me was like, what are you watching?
Some weird stuff there. Don't worry about it. You don't want none of this.
You don't want any part of this. But they, so Brandon pointed out, and I've confirmed this now because I've watched a bunch of people now teach it, and they were teaching and they've taught it. Okay, we talk about in jiu-jitsu, there's no like right or wrong or whatever. But what Brandon was talking about, where Marcin's hand was in the beginning, out towards the toes, that's what everybody thinks, because that's what we get taught, like the end of the toes and like curling it and like doing the toe hold thing of like trying to bend the foot. When he flipped his hand over into that C cup on his ankle, you see the structure in the knee go from like flimsy because it was bleeding off to his hip. And when guys teach that, they're like, oh yeah, they kind of goes like this and they can go, and you get it to their hip and then you go up. And it's like, well, in the moment, that's really hard, especially a strong guy that's like on there. When they flip their hand over and catch it the way that he caught it, and it's like the very last shot in the documentary before it goes to the next cut is like where he flips his hand over. And Brandon's like, see that hand position? He flips it over, and it's like almost instantaneous that it just goes click. And you're like, oh, wow. Like that's such a small detail. And that was so catastrophic. Like that's my jujitsu from the filmmaking grows every time I edit stuff like this. Because like you pick up
to myself. Keep talking.
You're watching it again.
Yeah, I just found it.
They when these guys like come in, and like the documentary is full of this, and like, oh man, not all of it makes the end result. Like in the edit room, it's just chaos, chopping stuff off. So there are moments where these guys innovate the game, like change how they're doing a move live, make it successful, and then they go in the back and teach it to each other.
Oh,
you see what I'm talking about?
It's a lateral knee bar.
Yeah.
It's not a Z-lock.
Yeah, it's like, well, I think that's still the Z-lock, like because of the position you're in.
Okay, that's probably whatever.
Splitting hairs when you get there, but you see,
but it's not like you said though. It's not the thing that I thought it was either. Yep. Like watching it back, is like it went out towards, like you said, went out towards the knee and got more of that lateral knee bar kind of pressure than it did actually like internally rotating that hip in a way that made it pop. I thought it was the hip the whole time. Yeah, still, and even watching it back, I was wondering why he was rubbing the lower part of his leg more.
It was that outside. It was probably meniscus at least, if not like everything else. Because the other thing you got to think about the knee.
Cool. I'm glad you brought that up, man. I did not even catch that myself again. I saw Brandon say it, but in the moment, I didn't look at his knee the way that you had mentioned the knee thing. I saw the grip, but I was like, all right, he still just kind of internally rotated the hip with that grip, which it works, but.
He immobilized the knee, or immobilized the hip, and then isolated the knee with the grip switch. And the grip switch is what made my stomach flip upside down when I saw it.
Yeah, watching it back, that made it hurt a lot worse, man. Porfirio took some damage on that one. I saw he was back recently at an event.
I've seen him compete since, and it's like, wow, all right.
Good for him that he's back. I hope he's actually, nice and healthy and stuff like that. Because
well, I mean, and during the week he's just sitting down right now. Like he's just sitting out, and like the last thing we saw of him on the documentary was him just talking about the fact he's like, I've been hurt worse, know. But it's one of those things that in the PGF. The problem is that it's a lot more like a football game. Is that like you got to rub it out and go get back out there. Like you got to stretch that bad boy out and put some KT tape on it and rock it.
Dude, so straight up, this is another thing I've been thinking about a lot too. Like I think people did a lot more this season with stuff. It felt like with New Hope Regeneration, especially they took their team and some players over to a recovery room and stuff. Yeah. But for me, that when I was there during that season, that was like. Beyond, like, besides competing, that was my second most important thing, was to get like the recovery in and make sure I was sleeping. I didn't want to do all the extracurricular stuff that everybody was wanting to kind of do. If we were not required, I was trying to go rest and be chilled out and use my Normatec compression stuff or whatever to get recovery stuff in. That's such a huge thing too. And
well, like this season they had
that, different things. That said, like I think that kind of stuff, having a trainer, like a sports trainer, not like a coach that's there with you, but like if you could have a trainer that knows, or each team maybe gets assigned a trainer that like can help them or whatever that is, like that to help with some of that stuff too, would be really important. Because we saw Davis get his ankles, or one of his ankles popped by Ryan pretty early too. And that, man, it was one of the most like disgusting sounds in person that I'd heard like in
Bro,
a while.
it tripped me out because it was like 2 a.m. when I was editing that at one point where I was sitting there. The pop happens, and a solid 12 seconds goes by. Like Ryan makes a transition before he even reacts, acts like he's gonna tap. Doesn't he? Like, I thought the sound bar was off. Like, I sat there and moved the sound around and was like, wait, he waited that long to react? I mean, oh my goodness.
And somebody taped him up, you know.
Yep, he got taped up.
Yep, he was seen fine by being taped up by somebody that knew what they were doing, which I can't remember who that was. I feel like it was Abe, if that's correct.
No, the referee.
Was it the ref? Okay. Oh, PJ.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
PJ.
doctor. Yeah, that's right. PJ is basically a surgeon. He is not basically. He is.
I was fixing to ask. I was like, what is basically a surgeon?
Yeah, my bad. Like, he for real is, and he teaches people stuff. Like, that dude's really educated in that. Like, he's a smart dude. You know, he's not just some referee that does jiu-jitsu either. He's also, like, in his real life, saves people's lives and stuff like that too. So shouts out to PJ for that. I couldn't remember who it was in the doc that did it, but having stuff like that available makes a big difference, right? Because in football or these other sports, how often does somebody go to the back or to the training room or whatever, and then they're able to come back and finish games and stuff like that and be able to help their team win, or in this case, they may not give up a dunk to, you know, an opponent they don't need to in the next match, because you saw Davis be able to come back and be able to finish matches with a draw with other really tough, dangerous guys that would normally be able to, you know, probably strike fear into a lot of other people. But he was just like, yeah, I'm fine. It's not a big deal. He came back, and it was one of the worst sounding breaks that we had heard, we thought, and he finished the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And other guys didn't. So that's something to be said too, is like, maybe not all sounds are as bad as we think, or is there a level of popping that actually is better tolerable or worse?
Yeah.
And how do you know? How do you know? Because I don't know basically now through the sounds that we hear, because you could hear Andre and you could hear Davis's, but they didn't, you know, they're two different outcomes, very, very, very much different outcomes in that way. And so there are pops that happen, you know, we've all done it too, from when you're just kind of getting down into a position sometimes, and you and your partner kind of freeze, and you're like, yeah, oh, it's all right, it's okay, that was a good one, that was a good pop, you know. It's like, so you never really, I don't know, when do you ever really know? Because in that, when like people's back goes out, it's kind of like, that's just what the same thing is, like, oh, the back locked up or whatever. It's just kind of the same idea.
Well, and I mean, he's young, you know, he's still like young. He's like, there's that. I mean, we all know that, like, when you're in your like early 20s and whatnot, there's times that like you get hit and it feels like you got hit by like a freight truck, and like you sit there and do the like 10 toes, 10 fingers count, and you're like, all right, you get up, and then you're fine for the rest of the day and the next week. And then now you get hit like that, it just completely obliterates you for a day and a half because you tripped and fell.
I hit myself with a bat in the ankle the other day, just playing around accidentally. And it's about put me down. I'm for real, dog. I haven't went to the doctor yet, because I was like, I think I didn't know what happened at first. And I was like, so I'm not even injured. Maybe I'm just like hurting for some reason weird. You know how it is. Sometimes you're just like, I don't know if I did something funny or not, but I didn't remember anything. And I thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, I did bang myself right there. So
to wrap your thoughts
on
grapplers,
man, a lot more coming up.
What are your thoughts on it so far? Like, watching it, like, is it one of those things that, like, I wish this had existed before me? Like, you know, I wish that somebody had been doing this, and like I had this kind of footage and this kind of things on the thoughts that I was thinking in the times and things like that. At the same time, I'm kind of like, you know, glad that I don't have every single thing that went wrong.
That's true too, you know, for sure. There's a lot of stuff that's not on there that, you know, a good thing that you guys are doing a lot is making sure people aren't intentionally being made a certain way. You know, you don't try to edit things to make somebody be, you know, good or bad specifically. It just is what it is in those ways. So that's one thing that I've enjoyed more, is like the consistency on that kind of stuff. You let people be kind of who they are. I wish there was stuff like this for sure when I was doing more stuff, because man, I don't have a lot of good like stuff, good footage of things like that I've done. Unfortunately, a lot of the matches that made it to YouTube and stuff were the ones that the other guys won, so they wanted to post about it, and I didn't take a lot of a lot of videos of other stuff. So like you go look up stuff. It's like you can find a bunch of not so good videos of things I did, which, again, at the time as an athlete, I was like, I let them kind of see that stuff anyway and think what they think. It wasn't necessarily the same world that we live in now, where people are basically filming everything all the time to give to the audience or to give to the fans of stuff. And we in a lot of the places I was training at, man, it was almost specifically like
forbidden.
If a guy brings the camera in, you beat his ass. And I was like, okay, I won't do that then. I won't bring one in. I won't worry about trying to take after class photos. Like I trained with a bunch of dudes back in the day that I never took photos with or asked for pictures of or whatever. So it's just kind of like stories.
Yeah, you just didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, man, I'm like you. I'm you. We're the same. We're the same. You know what I mean? Even though they were better or what, like on the come up, or even maybe, big guys like Dan Henderson and stuff like that. Some, we weren't on that level to where we were buddies enough to jump into an after class photo. Yeah. And I didn't want to be like, this man was just over here working hard and all this stuff too.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is go over there and bother people like that for a picture and stuff like that. Cause I know how I was feeling after the sessions and stuff like that too. So I don't know. Maybe that was just me being too much in my head. Maybe, because I'm trying to be a samurai. I was trying to be the martial artist and things like that. So I didn't want to feel some kind of way. I wanted to, and I still do this a lot. Man, maybe it's a bad thing too. But like I wanted to be able to work hard enough to where they would want to have a picture with me.
Yeah,
like they would ask me to get in the picture. Or somehow, something like that. Not necessarily like, hey, come take a picture with me so I can have it, but just like, hey, man, you need to get in over here on these team things, stuff like that. I just want to kind of earn the nod more than just to have a picture with a guy and be like, this is my homie. And, it was just like a one-time photo shot thing.
One thing that I've learned in the creativity side of it is that like I do the same thing. Like I don't really do selfies with people and like to be like
I got
like, unless you're my homie.
At the PGF, I've done a lot more of it just because it's like, man, this is this opportunity to meet some of these guys that I've never met
place
before.
In that, yeah,
and they see me as something else too. It's like that's not me being the competitor going up to another guy who's me, as a ring announcer personality going up to these other coaches and people that I've looked up to as competitors, and I can look at them in a different light now because they're never going to be an opponent like that, too. So that was like
so you're able to remove yourself in that way.
Yeah. I don't compare myself to any of them anymore like I would have if I was still active or whatever, because I would always, man, I want to beat everybody. I wanted to be as good as or better. And knowing that, that wasn't always the case, but I took matches like that's, you know me. I took matches and things like that with guys who like would probably be able to destroy me. And I was like, I just want to see if they can, then I know where I'm at. If not, then okay, they're not as good as they thought, or they're not as good as I thought. And so then I'm as good or better than people think too. So that was always the thing for me, was to go out there and get the rub from anybody. And, you could be better. That didn't mean you were going to always be better. My dad taught me, if they beat you one day, make them beat you the next day. And then you keep going back until they can't beat you. That was just ingrained in me at a young age. Yeah. Like I took some lumps along the way. It is what it is though, right? There's a certain tenacity that came with that, that's gotten me through to where we are, just being able to go and just handle it, because it's another day, another fight, essentially. And it's kind of that thing like they even said it in the Grapplers too. Is like Carlos brought up what Jean-Jacques said or whatever, and I think it's very similar to that Hickson quote. It's like, even if you can't win, you make your opponent pay a steep price for victory. Essentially, is what it is. You make them remember you. That next time you come out there, they're not going to, when they see your name in a bracket, they don't think this is an easy bracket anymore. Immediately, even though they beat you, maybe they beat you 3 or 4 times. They're like, man, I hope that guy's on the other. Oh God, I hope I don't have to go against that guy.
Did you see that closing speech from Carlos with about Caleb to everybody?
Yes, about how the dog and basically essentially
that he wanted all those guys. Hey, take a note out of his book. Like, go play like he's playing, and that's what we want.
Yep. So that was very cool to see that, and those are all like, that's the important stuff, man, in competition and in life and in everything, man. Is just having to get after it and being willing to get after it, in whatever way it takes. And if you, man, people focus too much on winning by the rules. You do win a lot, but you never really get that big, huge following of people, or you never really have the big thing that you're hoping for if all you're doing is kind of gaming points and winning.
Well, what I see happens is like you can get all
the
things that people are chasing. You can get the fame, you can get money, you can get all the different things from it, especially at winning a game. People love winners. The thing that you notice about the winners that did that and didn't play the game along the way and didn't
there's nothing next.
So when they get to that point, they're pretty empty. They're just like, what am I doing this for? Now, when I think that you get the people that are the goats, that are the people that like do it and they're in it for the love of the game. It's like I heard somebody in an interview ask Tiger Woods one time of like, do you still get nervous or do you still get afraid for like the big show the next day? He's like, yeah. He's like, the minute I stop feeling that, I'm gonna quit.
Oh,
yeah, he's like, I don't. He's like, that's why I do it.
Dude, that's such a true thing too, man. And the fighting, that's why it's addictive, and that's why guys can't quit a lot of times too, is because there's nothing that compares to that feeling. There's no feeling that and you can get that from a lot of stuff. You don't have to be a fighter. Guys who do, or girls, like anybody that does whatever that's extreme in some ways, that a performance of any kind, even it gives you that. There's something about that that's very human and that's needed for you to be the best part of yourself, I feel like. And the people who run from that and hide from that, they never fully become who they should as a person. And they live not necessarily always a bad life or whatever, but maybe in their head more, they don't live the best life that they could because they're afraid to go out there and look bad or to make a mistake and fail in front of everybody. In which case, that's really where you get the growth and the comeback, is when you've made the mistake out there.
Yeah, I think that like the over pursuit of perfection can destroy like just production, like just anything. Like you won't produce anything if all you can focus on is the perfection. There you have to have that role. Like you have to have somebody who wants perfection and strives for perfection, but you have to understand that perfection's not possible, and so you have to just like done is better than perfect.
Yes, and when is perfect?
What is perfect?
Yeah, what is that? If you've done the perfect show, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. There could be a lot of things that happen, for it to be the perfect show. But in other people's opinions, like you said, this thing was on fire in the back end the whole time, or maybe it wasn't on fire in the back end the whole time, but there was no distribution for it or whatever. So you guys had this phenomenal show that nobody saw. And so now you basically, does that make it a great show still? It's an amazing show. Nobody saw it. Does it, it's like a tree falling in the, nobody around to hear it. Does it make a sound? Of course it did, but then nobody cares though. So, but
do you care?
That's really what matters, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, was the guy Rick Rubin, that talks about the fact that like, well, if you're making it only for them and not for yourself, then why are you doing it? And it's like one of those things too. It's like in the artistry of like what you were doing. Well, truly, I think you did have it on. Like that's why we like vibe and we're on like the same page. And like I call you my coach. Like, is the fact that like you were doing it for you. Like that's why you weren't really doing it for like which of course we all have the childhood like WWE dreams or like rock star dreams of like, they love me. Like everybody has that. That's human. But like you're riding that experience for you. Like you wanted that experience. That was an active choice. You're actively taking a step out of society into this thing to do something different. That's the point.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, okay, if everything kind of looks at through that lens, then that's how it does. To answer Egghead's question, the behind the scenes of season 3, that's out there, isn't it? It's on your channel. It was the documentation of your thing. We put that out. Did we not?
Yours.
Oh, season 3. Oh, okay, yeah. I'm getting to that.
That went dark. We're still recovering.
I'm still unconscious. Y'all are all figments of my imagination.
Yeah, he's still between Dane League's legs right now somewhere.
Bro, I forgot about all that, and he reposted it.
We almost put it on the insiders, and they're like, "We shouldn't do this to Isaac." And I was like,
"Why?
We should. We definitely should
do it.
Let's talk about it.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's topical because he brought it up. So.
There you go. All right. Well, now I'm on the topics.
Yep. How many times did you get killed during season 3?
Twice. No, 3 times.
Is that all?
Those were only deaths. Yeah. All the rest were breaks, which all the rest I think were like, I only got submitted like 2 more times, but
okay.
All the rest
exactly, yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but like the death was Dane Leak was the first one, and it was I didn't even know who Dane Leak was. He was my like roommate. Like
we were all in the same house. Yeah,
like we went out of the tunnel, and like I think right before we walked out, somebody was like, "Hey, did you know like the only person he's ever lost to so far in black belt is Keith Kokorian?" And I was like, "What?" Sweet. But the grapplers and like the documentaries, like it's been a long time in the works. Like to answer Egghead's question on the footage from season 3, like it was
that's different
idea as it was coming up, and so like I was filming stuff, and so now that's kind of become part of the ether of like telling the whole story, because at some point Keelan and I have the plans to like tell the whole story of the PGF and like as a whole, and like put all that stuff together and like weave everything we have and all that. Like right now we're just constructing the like ongoing story that's like it's built to do exactly what Steven was talking about, as far as like when you watch the basketball documentary, is that like when you get brought in and you're not really a fan or you don't know, there's all these characters and these human stories that you can see and connect with and go, oh man. And like now you're a fan of not only the sport, but the people inside the sport and the people that are building the sport. So like definitely everybody should watch that. It's coming out every Friday. We're on episode 3 this week.
Boom.
And that
what
crew.
Time? Do we know the time it drops? Is there a premiere drop thing still where it's live or not? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are just kind of fun sometimes to jump in the live chat.
No, I love them.
Like if it happens that way, maybe we can find out. We'll post about it if we find out exactly.
If we find out about it on this post where this is cut up on social media somewhere, there will be a time. Usually it's like between 10 and noon, but like that could be some time zone. Who knows where we are? Allegedly. Let's there's times. Time
it's in
is
your subconscious. They'll figure it out.
But there was a couple more things on the docket.
Sorry.
You set the internet on fire with wrist locks.
Yeah.
Do you have any takeaway from that you want to share with the internet?
I mean, I think the fact that it still kind of stands. I haven't really seen anybody wrist lock anybody that wasn't like a higher belt at a lower belt kind of deal. There wasn't anybody that, whatever kind of situations. I saw people posting up some different wrist locks or whatever.
Yeah, I think I saw your nemesis, Matt Elkins, out there posting up.
He's not my nemesis. I don't think
he's not your nemesis anymore. Oh wait, no, Keelan's your nemesis right now. I forgot.
Yeah,
I forgot. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
Matt and I buried the hatchet after he beat me twice in a row.
So do you think you could wrist lock Keelan?
100%. I hate him. So I could definitely do it. He's such a lower rank than me. I could definitely do it. I get it. How many wrist locks could I get different ways? I could think of about 4 different wrist locks I could hit on Keelan in a 6-minute match, unless he just like shells up too much and starts to hide, because we know he's a coward.
Okay. Oh, and I'll point this out because I see Egghead like has been jumping up and down in the back of every single comment section ever of whatever, that Premu got Kamoy in season 2 with a wrist lock.
Oh, Chris Presler. Okay, Hapkido dude. He's a black belt in Hapkido. Just stop training, Chris. Just turn in your rank to Brandon. Tell him it was a nice run. Man, I love you, and I'm sorry that this had to be this way. It's a tough life. It's a hard life for us out here. But I would definitely just turn in my belt and ride off into that there sunset.
You heard it here. I didn't say it.
No, and like, dude, listen, Matt was so far ahead in that match that was wristlock the dude Jamie. I think it was
and,
Jamie, right? Was it
and
Jamie?
that is a it was
And Jamie
Jamie.
didn't know what was happening, so that was
Yeah.
another one of those like weird ones where it's like he didn't know it, and it doesn't matter. It was really great and it's awesome. So I'm props to that. But the fact still remains, it only happens on TV. It doesn't really happen in real life.
It's one of those TV moves.
Yeah, it only happened on
Okay,
TV.
it's
But
only TV moves.
he only
Okay,
did it because it was on TV.
all right. I can get behind
Right?
that. I
He could have
guess.
twisted that guy. He could have broke his neck.
Yeah, but instead he had
He
mercy
went
and
for
broke his wrist.
Was that mercy or was that complete just utter dominance from was that a black belt to a purple belt? Or, I
Okay,
think
I don't know. I mean,
he,
was it like the dribble between the legs?
he just
Like,
crossed him over. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Hit him
yeah.
with the crossover. We ain't talking about practice. You know.
Practice. We talking about practice.
You know.
All right.
How many wrist you got in practice?
Ooh, yeah. I guess that is a good point. There's a lot more wrist locks in practice than there are in the games.
Right. So it's like an Americana in a way. It's like it does work, but it's not necessarily as reliable as a first move as it is as a setup move to get you access to other things or whatever. You know, I love a good Americana. Don't get me wrong. It just
I was just sitting here taken aback by you. We give you a hot take segment on one show, and here you are just calling out the Americana.
I just been hot for a while here, and I just been holding back. Brandon told me to just open up a little bit. He's like, "Hey, let that dog out and let him walk some. You know, let him get around, get some air. He may need to pee on somebody's porch every once in a while. I don't know. I just made that up. He didn't say that part."
Well, all right. Porches beware. The dream's on the loose.
There will come a payday. Hallelujah.
All right. All right. Do you have anything else you want to share with the internet other than the Grapplers? 3, Changing of the Guard, episode 3 coming out on Friday at some point in time somewhere on the planet.
That's happening, man. We got some news about PGF that we can't tell you about that we're really excited about. That's got me hyped again on some other stuff. Unfortunately, that news is going to probably take the mid south back a little bit. May push that to a further time now because the timeline has shifted. The CERN collider was turned on, and things moved a little faster one direction in this timeline than we anticipated. So there's that. Still hyped up. We're still gonna be doing these things, man. We appreciate you guys tuning into this, the PGF Insiders, trying to do this thing more where it's a little more entertaining. Maybe we get some skits and bits, and if y'all like hot takes, man, I got them by the pound. I just don't tell nobody because I don't think anybody wants them. But yeah,
here's a hot take for you. If anybody wants to compete in the beautiful place of Cancun, hit me up. We got a competition coming up here.
Tell me about that.
We got a competition coming up soon that I don't have any dates or like I have dates, but like we're not solid on everything yet. But in the next couple months, we're going to put on the second edition of the Johnny Hernandez Invitational down here in Cancun. And if anybody doesn't know who Johnny is, he's the guy that runs the 10th Planet down here in Cancun, and it's also a Carlos Machado affiliate as well. So they are down here, and we did our first show last year, early in the year. We had Matt Elkins on, Brandon was on, and we had Kyle Chambers come in and play with some guys that most of them were local and like pretty good talent, like guys that were sitting there having leg lock exchanges going, 2, 3, 4, 5 like transitions deep into like real good shows with Kyle and some of the guys that came in.
Oh, so the Mexican jiu-jitsu scene is definitely like leveled up a ton in the last 4 to 5 years, I would say. For sure. In that time, who was it? Brandon Moreno when he won that UFC title. Yeah. Around about that time, they really we saw a big huge resurgence in more of like a martial arts instead of as much boxing. I think more people have gotten into
a lot more people started grappling or like going into the grappling direction, especially because of like things like that, like Brandon Moreno and stuff. Like people started training MMA and like they have a champion, like, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. Like there's like some dope Muay Thai gyms over in Tulum. Like there's like really like cool scene down here.
Like they're historically some of the toughest fighters.
Oh, dude, Mexican boxers are.
That's what I'm saying. So you just transfer that over to the other stuff. I'm sure that same culture is going to be really, really hard to manage once they get the depth overall and the years of experience in the game that other places have. That culture is definitely a fighting culture.
Yeah, for sure. So like, that'll be fun. That'll be in the next couple months. It's going to be kind of cool theme. There's a real cool like venue, like artistic.
I want to come.
It's going to be super fun. Yeah, you'll be on the list. I want to be on the list. So But yeah, we got cool things going on in the dream world. So
let's go.
We'll catch everybody next week. You'll be on the Insiders this weekend, correct?
Sunday, I think we're shooting for 7:00 p.m. Eastern to start with that for the Insider show. So yeah, hit us up if you guys got any specific bits that you want us to talk about, any news or anything unrelated. If you got the Dreams hot take, if you want me to rant about anything for $10, I'll just rant about a person that you want me to rant about. How about that?
We're starting the Dream Cameo channel. All right.
I'll make up the biggest, best story about them or the biggest, worst story about them. You just let me know what you need. I got time. Word.
See everybody next week.